Alrighty, friends, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for staying around. I know I said I was going to try to get content out more. Like I said, I had a family tragedy. Been just trying to work through that for the past few months. I'm back, though, and we're going to continue going. So last week, I released two videos. One pertaining to our new series, which will be on the Battle of Shiloh. I will be following that with the second part of the second day's battle, as well as biographies on Pierre-Gustave Toussaint-Beauregard, William Tecumseh Sherman, and Albert Sidney Johnston. But I also, the next day, released a video about the New York City draft riots. And like I said at the beginning of all of this, I didn't want this to just be a, so to speak, original channel. I want to do some reactions. I want to look at some music videos. And today I decided we're going to look at the music video for a band many people in this community enjoy, and that's the band Sabaton. So today we're actually going to be covering a video, one of the songs that takes place in 1944. It's called Uprising. Now, a little quick background on Uprising. Uprising is based on the Warsaw Uprising of 1944. Very interesting situation. The Russians at this time are pushing the German Reich, Third Reich, back towards Germany, and the Germans were trying to hold on to the possessions they still had in the east. So Warsaw, of course, being the capital of the first country that pretty much started the whole conflict, was very important for them to keep. But the Russians kind of suddenly were like, "Oh, we'll help the Polish out," but sadly, that help would never come. So if you enjoy the channel, I ask you to please subscribe if you're new. If you're a returning friend, please like, share, and comment. I love the discussions, and let's get into it. All right, friends, so this is what we're going to do. I'm going to play the song, but also I'll stop at certain parts. I'm not actually using Sabaton's music video. Sabaton actually has a music video for it, so I'll leave that in the link below for the actual music video. But I'm using a channel called AS Cotter, so I'll leave a link to that too, because they're gonna actually get the everything for this video. I won't. I'm just doing a review of the song. But as much as I love Sabaton, sometimes their music videos really aren't great. A lot of the time, it's just the band singing on stage with imagery behind them. I think sometimes it's a little better just to show what's actually going on to explain the song. So, again, this is the first time I'm actually reviewing a Sabaton song. Usually I do Epic Rap Battles or something, but we're going to be doing Sabaton. So, just a little background. The Warsaw Uprising was from August 1st to October 2nd, 1944. So a little bit to 2 months. Pretty much what was happening, the German army was being pushed out of Russia, Lithuania, and they were being pushed towards Poland. And the Warsaw Resistance, or better known as the Polish Home Army and Underground, were like, now's our time, because they were in contact with both Allied forces. You know, they were in contact with the British, Americans, and French, but they were also in contact with the Red Army. And pretty much the Red Army was like, yeah, we'll come help you. We're on our way. So they thought, the Russian army has just crossed into Poland. Now's our time to rise up. And that's what this music video is about. I'll stop it, explain some things, and then we'll keep moving. All right, so here we go. So, a few things already. So, obviously, we saw the imagery of the Jewish people being marched into concentration camps, the abuse the SS oppressed upon the regular Polish people as well upon Hebrews and people of what the Germans described as undesirables. This is very true. There was a hatred for Poland by the Nazi Party, mainly because the Nazis viewed Poland as traitors. Because what happened was, during the Middle Ages, something called the plague happened and all these other things. And what happened was a lot of these churches around Europe were blaming Jews for why the plague was spreading, any misfortune. Pretty much everything that the Nazis had said, it actually wasn't really a new thing. People have been doing it for centuries. But it was to this point that people were actually going out and killing people in droves. So Poland in the, I believe it was the 1500s, invited all of Europe's Jews to come live in Poland because they'd be safe. But that was a very big miscalculation, centuries later when the Germans crossed in, and Poland had one of the biggest Jewish populations at the time. So that's why, you see a lot. And just so you know, this is different. This uprising is different than the Warsaw Uprising. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. This is the Warsaw Uprising, not the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising were Jews living in the ghetto who were like, I would rather die than be sent to these concentration camps. So they rose up, and actually, I believe Hitler personally, if not personally, he monitored it very closely, commanded the Germans during the uprising. So that's an interesting little fact, but this is separate. But another cool thing, which not cool, but it shows the praying on the cross and everything. For those of you, my viewers, that are Roman Catholic, Pope Benedict, our recent Pope who passed away, he was actually a member of the Hitler Youth growing up. But a lot of people forget that his predecessor, John Paul II, was actually a Catholic priest in Warsaw during the war. And I don't know when, but there's a scene in the movie Exorcist Origins that's actually, from my understanding, based on an interaction that John Paul and the Nazis had, because the Catholic Church was hiding Jews. They were protecting them. The Pope at the time were hiding many of them in the Vatican from Mussolini and then later Hitler. And what ended up happening was the Germans rounded up a lot of men and women and lined them up in front of the church. And John Paul was the pastor. He was the Monsignor. He was in charge of the church. And they said, tell us where the Jews are. We're going to kill all these people. And he started praying. He begged God to be with him. And instead, the Germans said, there is no God here. And they began to shoot people. But John Paul continued to pray, praying for it to end. And after, I believe, like 5 or 6 people were shot, the Germans just stopped because they kind of believed that there were no Jews if this guy was just sitting here praying and letting this happen. But in The Exorcist, the priest becomes disillusioned with the Catholic Church after that. But in this situation, John Paul actually felt more strong in his faith. And another thing is women, men, and children, they were dying side by side. That's very true. Women and children were fighting along with the Polish Home Army. And they were also fighting against the Nazis for freedom. The mentioning of the Allies turned away, well, that's mainly because it shows you Parliament. It shows you the British Parliament. What was going on during this rising was across Europe in Holland, Operation Market Garden was happening. And part of Operation Market Garden were Polish paratroopers. The head, I forgot his name. Oh my gosh, Gene Hackman plays him in the movie. But the commander of the Polish paratroopers demanded that they be sent back to Poland to fight. But Montgomery, the British commander of Market Garden, said no. He's like, we need you here. So that's kind of what the Allies turned away kind of meant. But let's get back to it. Now, we're getting towards the end of the song, and, we're going to hit the famous Sabaton guitar solo. And I know a lot of my friends in the community are probably mad that I'm pausing right now. But, again, they, as you saw, they just mentioned Operation Market Garden. It's a little unfair, at least in this rendition, to be blaming Churchill for that. Churchill was actually the one sounding the alarm against the Nazis from the beginning, and he called it. He said they're going to invade Poland. And, you had someone like Neville Chamberlain, who was the prime minister before Churchill, who was like, no, they won't. We'll give them what they want, Czechoslovakia, and, they'll stop. But appeasement, as we know, doesn't work. But to say the Allies didn't help would be very unfair, because, and in Poland, it is reflected that, the Polish Home Army was alone. They were fighting this battle alone, but they were receiving air support from U.S. Mustangs. The Soviet Red Army was sending some air support. But the big problem in this situation, and it's not reflected very well most of the times when people think about it, the German army was on the retreat. Now, we think, we hear that, we think everything's disorganized. No, actually, the German army, what they would do was their army groups would circulate around large cities and then move from there using the highways and stuff. So when you had a situation that the Russians had been cracking their way through Poland, what's a major city you're going to concentrate troops around? Warsaw, Krakow, Prague, all these cities on the east. This is where the armies are going to start circulating, because one, this is where they're going to start trying to make stands and try to halt advances, but also the roadways all lead there. So the Polish armies, the Home Army's idea was, we'll strike them now. They're disorganized, they're retreating. But what was really happening was they were actually settling in, because they were prepared to fight the Red Army who was advancing. So, you're, in the video, you're starting to see a lot of these people are taking their own lives, because what's the other option is you become a German prisoner. And Poland, of all the countries in Europe, knew what that meant to become a German prisoner. It either meant execution or death camp. All right. So, I was talking a lot about the Western powers through this, but now I could explain what I meant before about the Russians. So, the Red Army was actually at the Vistula River, which lies right, literally exactly east of Warsaw. So, what happened was originally the Russians were going to go help. They wanted to go help, but Stalin had actually sat there and said, wait a minute, we want to take this city anyway, because, any way you look at how the war was going to end, a fear of the Allies were always the Russians were going to take the land they wanted at the end of the war. The Russians were not liberators. They turned them being attacked into their own personal conquest, which they created puppet governments that were still subservient to the Soviet Union. So the Russian army wanted to go in, but Stalin said, wait a minute, if the Polish and the Germans duke it out with each other, then we don't have to fight as many guys and soldiers and women, children, obviously, when we go in. And also, the Polish won't even put up a fight. Because something very much forgotten to history was, following World War I, the Soviet Union actually did invade Poland. The Polish army actually defeated them and pushed them back, which, sadly, Poland, much like France, kind of suffers ridicule because of World War II. But much like France, Poland actually was able to hold their own against the Soviet Union. What ended up being the problem, though, was that in the beginning of the war, you had the Germans attacking from the west and the Russians attacking from the east. So two-front wars are never easy. We see that happen exactly with Germany in both world wars. But overall, the Polish resistance lost about 15,200 men, and the Germans somewhere around 17,000. But another big issue was the Germans had tanks, armored vehicles, and things. The Polish resistance did not. Yes, they had weapons. Yes, they had grenades, explosives, and things. But when you're fighting a fully mechanized enemy, you're really not going to win that. But in general, it is seen as a brave moment in Poland, and it is a brave moment. They stood up finally after being oppressed since 1939. They said enough, and they finally stood up. And sadly, at the end of the day, had the Russians came in, they probably would have won. But you trade one evil for another evil, because Stalin immediately moved in and he put the Iron Curtain right around Poland. All those countries up to the center of Germany, everything east of there belonged to Russia. Well, Soviet Union, but you know what I mean. But yeah, so that is Uprising from Sabaton. Alrighty, friends. So yeah, that is Uprising from Sabaton. I thought it was a cool little video. I think I'm going to do this week a break from the originals. We'll do a few more reactions, maybe some tier lists, some... I was thinking of doing that GeoSearch game, maybe. It shows historical sites and you have to guess where in the world it is. But we'll see. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed. If you're new to the channel, would love you to hit that red subscribe button. Why not? Join the ever-growing community. We have a lot of new friends, especially during my leave of absence. We gained 20 people, which... thanks. Also, if you're a returning member, please leave a comment. Please leave a like. I would like to say that story about John Paul, I did skew it a little bit. I just had to double check because I didn't know if I got the facts right. He actually wasn't the priest. He was one of the men lined up to get shot. but the actions of the priest encouraged him to become a member of the church, to become a priest. So I do apologize for that. I knew the story. I knew he was involved. I just didn't know to what extent. I thought he was the priest. He was actually one of the men the Nazis were shooting. But thanks again for joining me. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you're here for the next video. Have a great day.